you just cut out the flip-flopping and just come out and say what you really want to say. There you are, racist Robbie. Do you feel better now you've got it all off your chest? Now watch this evil Tory MP, Keighley MP, Robbie Moore, try to exploit those who suffered abuse in the Home Affairs Select Committee oral evidence on the 21st of January 2025, when he was asking Professor Alexis Jay to say that we should have another public national inquiry on a certain type of abuser.
Thank you, Chair. Can I first start by thanking both of you, particularly yourself, Professor Jay, for your involvement over many, many years and speaking and listening to some incredibly horrendous stories from many victims and survivors. And can I also say that I am deeply, I think frustrated is too light a word, in fact infuriated that not all of the recommendations have been enacted in full, and my reading of the report which you produced, incredibly detailed as it was, is regardless of political party, both nationally and at local levels, this is a failure of the British state at all levels, and indeed anyone with safeguarding responsibilities, to enact their full responsibilities in putting all of your recommendations in full, enacting them in full, as I've been advocating for consistently.
Bear that statement in mind, because it comes back later on.
So one of the what I'd like to focus on is the challenge of the fact that an incredibly detailed report has been done by yourself. Hopefully we'll be in a position of those recommendations being put in place in full. The report which you carried out was very wide-ranging, quite rightly. Do you feel now that there should be a specific national inquiry that is specifically looking at rape gangs, gang-related grooming, child sexual exploitation in areas, for example, where those concerns have been raised not only in Rotherham but also across the Bradford district, like I've been advocating for?
Why don't you just come out and say it, you little racist turd? Oh, and don't worry about 30p lead dinner bell in the background.
That's just telling us that the business is starting, don't worry. I'm not going to all run and vote.
I think I made my own position clear a couple of weeks ago that I certainly at this point do not think there should be a national inquiry. I certainly thought obviously a local inquiry would be justified, but not a national public inquiry. Having just spent years and years on it. But actually, there were for different reasons. First of all, there was a discussion that said, well, I can't remember where it originated, but at the beginning of all this, there was a view that perhaps the recommendations should be further delayed. Now, clearly, I wasn't going to agree to or support anything that said that. But however, beyond that, I simply do not understand, and I do have the experience of Rotherham to go on as well. It's just more of concern to me that victims and survivors will not necessarily have their aspirations met by a public inquiry unless they know a little more about the processes involved and how lengthy anything on the nature of a public inquiry could be. And also, it simply does not, I hear so often, people will be brought to justice, but they can't be by the public inquiry. It doesn't have that power.
Well, I thought so as well, because I more thought about it. Wouldn't a public inquiry jeopardise a trial anyway? You know, the perpetrators wouldn't exactly get a fair trial anyway, would they? Because they've been named in a public inquiry. Wouldn't their lawyers have grounds to have the case thrown out because they'd say, well, my client won't get a fair trial? Now, I don't know because I'm not a lawyer, but that was the first thing that popped into my head. What do you guys think?
So there's an acknowledgement that, quite rightly, your report was very wide-ranging, on the assumption that this government enact the full recommendations, which I can understand the frustration that you've had, that they have not been put in place fully. So let's assume that that is the aspiration of this government and they are done at speed. is there not a possibility to have a twin-tracked process, to have a national inquiry when there are concerns of over 50 towns, like Rotherham, like Telford, like the Bradford district that's never had a spotlight shone on it, that actually by just having a hodgepodge approach, by having very in-depth local inquiries, that you are not then actually getting the full picture when you're specifically looking at the challenges associated with rape gangs, gang-related grooming, child sexual exploitation.
Racist Robbie, you just cut out the flip-flopping and just come out and say what you really want to say. Because he's basically saying, I agree with everything you said, but can you just help our party out with this and just say, yes, we definitely need another national inquiry on just a certain type of child abuser. Well, you just come out with it, mate.
Well, you may be right, but on the other hand, in the CSE investigation that we carried out, we were very clear that this wasn't a problem on the wane at all, and people were treating it as if it were a problem that was going away when it wasn't, and we said that in the report, and the data was awful. I would rather we allowed the proposed exercises on data to be in place to see if we could better understand the picture from facts. It would be nice if people actually relied on some facts for a change and numbers, and took some of the aspects out of all of this that I've found distasteful. And I agree with you that it should be a matter that it does not attract specific political it's about children, and it has to be about the children.
Absolutely, Professor Alex Jay. This should be about the children, not use them as a political football. And I felt she was saying to those who need to get off social media and stop listening to Nazi Space Karen on Twitter and stop using them as a political football to attack people from a certain ethnic minority. But come on, racist Robbie, stop flip-flopping about. You say your party that says it is, spit it out. Which certain minority are you talking about, Robbie Moore?
That's why I'm specifically saying there's been failure at a political level on all political parties. I've been quite clear on that consistently for a long period of time. But I just want to dig a little bit deeper on why we would not want to provide more openness, more transparency on having a national inquiry specifically that looks at this issue. Because can I just propose a challenge to you that I'm faced with?
For fuck's sake, will you stop the waffling? Just spit it out and get on with it, you little racist turd.
So across the Bradford district, we've never had a local inquiry. We've never had any spotlight that's been shone on it. There was a weak report that was produced in 2021 that had 50 pages long, looked at some horrendous child sexual exploitation, gang rapes of only 5 children, and concluded that children remain unprotected while some perpetrators remain unknown and remain unchallenged. We know across the Bradford district that just only last week 8 men were convicted for gang rape in Keighley. In February 22, 4 men were convicted of gang rape from Keighley. February 2016, 12 men were convicted of gang rape. In 2015, 11 men, all of British Pakistani heritage.
There you are, racist Robbie. Do you feel better now you've got it all off your chest? Yes, our little racist Robbie, not interested in those children who were abused by British white grooming gangs. He has no interest in the Muslim victims of child abuse. Our little racist Robbie only cares about those brown child abusers. What a wanker, eh? Well, this little turd, he carried on with this bollocks for another 10 minutes. Not going to bore you with it. He will just basically, can you do us a big favour of saying, we need a public inquiry just on brown child abusers so we can attack this government constantly. And, sod the victims, Professor. Well, after all that bollocks from our little racist Robbie, Lib Dem MP Paul Kohler asked a question where Professor Alex Jay explains the reason why our little racist Robbie's bollocks is simply just bollocks.
There might clearly be a case for another national inquiry if their systemic issues hadn't been addressed by your report, but your contention is presumably you have addressed those systemic issues, or you are seeking to address those systemic issues with your recommendations. Is that correct?
Yes, and there are a lot of recommendations across the piece on child sexual abuse that are also relevant to CSE. Of course they are. You know, the recommendations are not exclusively for children who have been abused in schools or the church or wherever. They are equally, in terms of the behaviours, they're equally applicable to CSE.
There you go. There's no difference between those abused within the church, in schools, and those who were groomed by Muslims. Muslims don't have different tactics to pervy politicians, vicars and teachers, who, whatever profession they're in, and they're out to exploit vulnerable children. They don't do it differently. There's no difference. So, racist Robbie Moore, you did say, and I quote, yes, which is why I am specifically saying that there has been failure at a political level in all political parties. I have been quite clear on that consistently for a long period. Well, I decided to check Hansard about how many times since 2019 our little racist Robbie brought up grooming gangs. Well, from day one till April 18th, 2022, he constantly brought up grooming gangs so many times by never mentioning the term grooming gangs. Even then, all he did was put his name on a public office child sexual abuse bill. And then on the 20th of April 2022, he brought up grooming gangs in the drug crime debate. And during his diatribe, he never mentioned once about having a public national inquiry into certain types of grooming gangs. Not once. Shocker, eh? But from then, right up until the 8th of January 2025, our racist Robbie constantly brought up the idea of national inquiries into grooming gangs by never mentioning it once. Then, all of a sudden, grooming gangs were on every racist MP's lips on the 9th and on the 16th of January 2025. So I wonder what actually happened around that time for grooming gangs to come back into the limelight. Oh yeah, it was Space Karen, wasn't it? So racist Robbie hasn't been really constantly bringing this up. Because if he had, he would have been demanding that these recommendations being implemented, wouldn't he? But you didn't, did you, racist Robbie? So this video proves it as well. But what do you guys think? Let me know down below, and if you enjoy everything House of Commons and select committee meetings, like and subscribe, and I shall bid you farewell and take care, my friends.